Breaking news this hour, Canadian actor Alan Thicke has died. That news has been confirmed by his publicist and his family.
Alan Thicke was the ultimate all-round entertainer.
He was multi-talented. He was singing and dancing and writing and directing.
Alan's multi-talented career spanned over half a century. But it was acting in the hit show Growing Pains that made him a household name.
Alan was just intensely likable.
Yet behind the showbiz success lay an unfulfilled dream to play in the National Hockey League, and a dangerous habit that was gradually destroying him.
Alan was inviting disaster by the way he lived.
On Tuesday, December 13th, 2016, Alan Thicke died after playing hockey in Burbank, California. He was 69.
Alan Thicke's death certificate says he died from a fatal rupture to his aorta, the largest artery in the body. This is very rare and hard to explain given that reports suggest that he was in great shape only weeks before his death. So what was going on inside Alan's body that resulted in such a sudden and catastrophic failure?
World-renowned medical examiner and forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Hunter has conducted thousands of autopsies. Working closely with law enforcement and other forensic specialists, his pivotal role in investigating suspicious cases has revealed the truth behind mysterious deaths for over 20 years.
Alan's death certificate states that the cause of his death was an aortic dissection. This is a rare and life-threatening cardiovascular condition in which the lining of the aorta, the main artery that carries blood from the heart to the body, tears open, and the blood pours out, starving vital organs, including the brain. This tells me how Alan died, but not what caused the fatal damage to his aorta. I'm going to investigate every aspect of Alan Thicke's life in forensic detail, using his death certificate, medical documents, and first-hand accounts to discover what led to the death of this much-loved personality.
August 31st, 2016, Santa Barbara, California. 3.5 months before his sudden death, Alan appears on the reality show Hollywood Medium. During the show, clairvoyant Tyler Henry delivers Alan a stark warning.
He was warned by the host that he had a potential heart issue that he needed to keep an eye on.
Pretty scary. Him talking about Alan possibly having some heart issues.
Alan told Tyler Henry there was no history of heart disease in his family, but takes the warning seriously, visiting his doctor in LA a few weeks later for a checkup.
He ate junk food galore, and his cholesterol was excellent. His sugars were excellent. His blood picture was excellent. His blood pressure was excellent. What a contradiction.
I can see here that Alan was given a clean bill of health. His heart didn't show any signs of disease 2 months before his death, so I'm going to have to look at other longer-term health issues he may have had to find the root cause of his aortic dissection.
Alan Willis Jeffrey was born on March 1st, 1947, in Ontario, Canada. His mother, Joan, was a nurse, and his father, William Jeffrey, a stockbroker. Alan was their only child. His parents divorced when he was 6, and his mother then married Brian Thicke, a doctor.
As a child, he was superiorly intelligent. If you see any class pictures of Alan, you all see this little shrimp in the center. You think he's a shorty. He isn't a shorty. It's because he's 3 years younger than all the classmates. He was always ahead of them. They were always skipping grades.
From an early age, Alan was drawn to television.
Through high school, he would make money on the side by writing questions for quiz shows.
Alan's other passion was sports, especially hockey.
He was obsessive about hockey. As a young boy, he was in love with the Montreal Canadiens.
I think the sport allows him to kind of show this sort of prowess, to kind of, to stand up and be counted next to people that may be taller than him, maybe stronger than him, but perhaps not better than him at the sport. And I think, again, this feeds into his sense of self-worth, his sense of competence and self-esteem.
By the time he was 16, Alan was in college, where he also played football, another high testosterone sport, until a knee injury forced him off the field.
It was just a bad hit, and that tore his meniscus. He was in a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort.
Alan had to have surgery on his knee.
That knee bothered him for the rest of his life, so he had a little bit of a limp.
The knee injury didn't dampen his love of sports, so he began writing about them for the student newspaper.
His passion for sports and just his knowledge, he excelled in that.
After college, Alan's writing ability got him a job at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
His career just took off in writing and producing and directing.
In 1970, at the age of 23, Alan met and married actress and singer Gloria Loring. They had 2 sons, Brennan and Robin, who became a pop star. Alan and Gloria were both talented and ambitious, so they decided to move to Hollywood, where his ability to craft funny lines soon got him a job writing on shows like Fernwood Tonight.
It was a really, really good opportunity for him. He seemed to do well pretty quickly.
Within a month, he was an assistant writer, and the next thing you know, he was writing.
Alan also had a gift for composing jingles and theme tunes.
He did some of them with Gloria, Facts of Life, and Different Strokes. He's singing on that, Growing Pains song. He did jingles for a lot of game shows, The Wheel of Fortune.
By the late 1970s, Alan had found success as a show writer for big names like Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, and Glenn Campbell.
It took years. Like Lawrence Welk said, I did one-night stands for 20 years and became an overnight success. So similarly, Alan does, he slugged, and bang, he wrote a show, I think it was for Bobby Darin, and wham, it just clicked. And then he became an overnight success.
It wasn't long before he was given his own show. Thick of the Night appealed to a young, hip crowd, but not being a network show limited its potential. And it was unable to compete with mainstream heavyweights like The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson.
An edict came down from The Tonight Show that anyone who appears on Thick of the Night cannot be on The Tonight Show. That was the first nail in the coffin of Thick of the Night.
The Thick of the Night lasted only 2 years. It was canceled in 1984, the same year his marriage to Gloria came to an end. Alan was down, but not out. In fact, his big break was just around the corner. In 1985, he was offered a job that would change his life. Growing Pains was a family sitcom in which Alan played a psychiatrist who decides to be a stay-at-home dad.
It startled me because he was a director and a writer and a producer. What the devil are you doing acting? I didn't even know you could act.
Alan was just intensely likable. He was the kind of dad who you want to have around all the time. If the kids were having issues with coming-of-age things, he would always just be able to put his arm around them and say, it's going to be okay. And everybody loved him.
The show ran for 7 years. It made Alan Thicke a household name.
So many times we go somewhere and they say, "You're Alan Thicke. I grew up to you."
Alan was even voted America's favorite dad.
He deserved to have that label of America's favorite dad because it was important to him, and you could see it. He was trying to show decency on television.
I can see in his records that by the early 2000s, Alan was in constant pain from the knee injury he had suffered in college. After 40 years of wear and tear, it appears he could barely walk. So in 2005, I can see he had a total knee replacement. And this involves removing the damaged knee and putting an artificial joint in its place. The operation is usually carried out under a full anesthetic. anesthesia and surgery can have an impact on the cardiovascular system. In some cases, it can cause high blood pressure, which can put pressure on the aortic tissue, making it more susceptible to tearing.
But Alan came through the operation with no adverse effects.
6 weeks later, he was playing hockey. Just amazing. I remember post-operatively, he said, "Dad, since the surgery, I kind of feel naked." I said, why? How do you mean that? He said, "I'm so used to being in agony, I miss my pain."
Alan's knee surgery took place more than 10 years before his death, and that's too long for it to have been a factor in the rupture of his aorta. So I need to look further into the details of Alan's life to see what led to this rare and catastrophic event.
And Dr. Hunter discovers an obsession with potentially deadly consequences.
Alan Thicke's cause of death was an aortic dissection, a tear in the lining of the aorta, the artery that carries blood from the heart to the rest of the body. So far, I've discovered that 11 years before his death, he had knee replacement surgery. In some cases, the high blood pressure after the surgery can weaken the aortic wall, making it more susceptible to tearing. But as this happened more than 10 years before his death, I'm going to discount it as playing any part in it.
October 20th, 2016, Los Angeles, California. 7 weeks before Alan's death.
America's favorite TV dad, Alan Thicke, his beautiful wife Tanya is here with us.
He and Tanya appear on the Home and Family program to promote the second season of their reality show, Unusually Thick.
When they started talking to us about doing a reality show, we thought, you know, our superficial reality is too boring, and our real reality is too
crazy.
Yeah.
It was, in a way, pretty commendable that Alan did this Unusually Thick reality show because it was really designed to help the careers of his wife and youngest son.
I think he stepped back in order to let them shine a little bit more than him.
In the show, it's clear that Alan had hockey in his blood. He played 2 or 3 times a week. It kept him fit and grounded in the dizzy whirl of show business.
When he moved to Los Angeles, he formed a North Hollywood League. And he got everybody to play hockey. He got Californians who'd never been on skates addicted.
Alan really helped build hockey here through his enthusiasm, through his just love of the sport. He loved being part of the hockey world. I mean, hockey was the through line for his life.
They love to get out there because it doesn't feel like a workout. It feels like a game, the camaraderie, but yet it is spirited. And they do want to win, and they want to get that puck in the net.
Ice hockey is a fast-moving and often violent sport. Aside from the obvious risks, the stop-start nature of the game can be dangerous because your heart rate can reach very high levels when you skate, and blood pressure drops suddenly when you stop. If the wall of Alan's aorta were weakened, then the sudden change in blood pressure caused by the exertion could be significant. And I can also see in reports that he suffered a serious trauma during a game.
3 years before Alan's death, in the middle of a game, he suddenly felt very short of breath. He could barely walk.
It was quite painful, and then when he went to the hospital, they discovered he had a collapsed lung.
The medical term for a collapsed lung is pneumothorax. It occurs when air leaks into the space between the lung and the chest wall and pushes on the outside of the lung until it collapses. It can be serious and even fatal. A tension pneumothorax can push the heart and arteries to the other side of the chest. This is life-threatening and usually the result of a chest injury. But looking at reports, I can see Alan didn't have a chest injury. He had what's called a spontaneous pneumothorax, which occurs when an air blister on the lung breaks open. Some studies have shown that an abrupt change in temperature can trigger a spontaneous pneumothorax. The average temperature in Los Angeles is in the 60s, and the air temperature in the ice rink Alan frequented is around 50. Coming in off the street, he would have experienced a sudden drop of more than 10 degrees, and this could have been enough to trigger the collapse of his lung.
Surgeons repaired Alan's collapsed lung by inserting a tube to remove the excess air, which then allowed the organ to expand. They then removed a small part of the lining of his lung and allowed it to heal and bond to the chest wall so that it wouldn't collapse again.
The recovery was slow and he was hospitalized, and we were all very concerned. It really upset him. I mean, he was in tears over that.
His great fear wasn't that it was going to kill him, but that it was going to keep him from playing hockey ever again. And that's pretty much the same as death for him.
This is somebody who is a workaholic, pushes himself. So one would argue that, this 2 or 3 kind of hours a week were what allowed him to push himself in other ways. So that being taken away from him affected the equilibrium in other parts of his life and his sense of identity.
Alan was determined to get his lungs back in shape and get his old life back. As soon as he was well enough, he was back on the ice and back to his busy schedule. In 2013, he participated in the hit show Celebrity Wife Swap, and the following year, he toured the country hosting Dancing Pros Live.
Results about to be voted on by you, the voting public.
He was gone for weeks at a time. That's very, very physically draining and demanding. He told me, I'm starting to show my age. This is a little much for me.
It's clear that Alan's health issues didn't stop him from embarking on an exhausting schedule. Although I don't believe his collapsed lung was directly linked to his ruptured aorta, I am building up a picture of a driven man whose ambition in his career and on the ice may have been at the expense of everything else.
December 11th, 2016, 2 days before Alan's death. Alan and his family attend a Christmas barbecue. A friend remarks that he looks unwell and asks if he's feeling okay. Alan tells him he's a bit short of breath and feels a bit dizzy. His friend suggests he sees a doctor, but Alan says it's probably just a chest cold or a minor infection.
Fatigue, breathlessness, and dizziness can also be symptoms of heart disease. If the heart is not working properly, there will be less blood going to the major organs and muscles, which makes the sufferer feel tired and weak. If less blood reaches the brain, it can cause dizziness. And because the heart and lungs are involved in transporting oxygen to the body and removing carbon dioxide, any problems with either of these processes will result in shortness of breath. Alan's symptoms could also have been the result of the tear appearing in his aorta. A fatal dissection is not always sudden. It can take time to become life-threatening.
The dirty little secret of Hollywood is that no one ever gets sick, no one ever ages. If they know that you're sick, well, no one's gonna hire you again. In Hollywood, looking good is much better than being healthy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alan ignored the symptoms and did not see a doctor.
Thank you. Thank you.
He was fit and exercised regularly, so he couldn't imagine having anything worse than a cold.
He was very conscious about keeping himself slim. When you're on television all the time, you want to make sure that you're looking good.
We'll never know if Alan did have a cold in the days before his death, but by ignoring these symptoms and not getting checked out by a doctor, he potentially missed an opportunity for someone to spot an issue that could have saved his life.
And looking into Alan's lifestyle, Dr. Hunter discovers an addiction that can have a catastrophic effect on the heart.
Alan had recently had a full medical checkup and had been given a clean bill of health, but a ruptured aorta can be caused by things that are not easily visible in a checkup. So I think I need to dig deeper into his lifestyle for answers. Alan led a very active life, but that doesn't mean he was healthy. I can see here that he had a particular habit that was doing him a lot of harm: salt.
It would drive my father crazy as a physician because he'd watch Alan with salt and he'd grab him and say, "You're coming into the office tomorrow, I'm gonna do a blood test and check your cholesterol."
He used a salt shaker excessively, and I always used to admonish him for that.
Salt can be dangerous. It makes your body hold on to water, and if you eat too much salt, the extra water in your body can raise your blood pressure. The higher your blood pressure, the greater the strain on your heart, arteries, kidneys, and brain. And this can lead to heart attacks, strokes, dementia, and kidney disease. High blood pressure is also one of the leading factors in aortic dissection. Close to 80% of individuals who present with this deadly condition have a previous history of high blood pressure.
But the game Alan loved could also have played a part in his dangerous addiction.
When people play hockey, they wear a lot of equipment, from all the padding to the pants to the shin guards, and it's actually quite heavy. So they're lugging a lot of weight.
By the nature of the sport and the clothing they wear, hockey players tend to sweat a lot. And when a body becomes dehydrated, it loses sodium, which it then needs to replenish with fluids and salty foods in order to reset the electrolyte balance. But I can see that salt wasn't the only problem with Alan's diet. He also loved butter.
He could go through a pound of butter like talking about it. He just loved it.
If you had baby back ribs and a baked potato, his baked potato had to have its own plate. And that plate was half a pound of butter and sour cream and bacon and chives.
One has to wonder, growing up in sort of those cold parts of Canada, right, where, you know, having breakfast with like lots of pancakes with butter and bacon and you know, because that's what you need to kind of stodge up in the morning to feel warm. So even though you kind of fast forward a few decades and he's aware of saturated fats and why they're bad for you not to take them, there's probably a part of him that still responds in the same positive way that he did all those years before. So perhaps that was a part of it.
There may also be another reason for Alan's excessive consumption of butter. He played a lot of sports. And butter is high in saturated fat, which raises anabolic hormones in the body. These are the hormones that stimulate muscle growth, among other things. Perhaps he was looking for ways to improve his strength and muscle power.
When you're out there playing a game, you don't think about how hard you're working. I would say a game of hockey would be probably equivalent to a 5-mile run, easily.
Fat intake for an athlete should range between 20 and 35% of total daily calories. Current guidelines recommend that no more than 10% of fat intake should come from saturated fats. Eating more than that can raise your levels of bad cholesterol, which is linked to heart and circulatory disease like atherosclerosis, one of the causes of aortic dissection. Atherosclerosis is a disease in which fat, cholesterol, and other substances build up inside the arteries. This material is called plaque. It clings to the artery walls, reducing their diameter. This forces the heart to pump harder in order to deliver blood around the body. Plaque also weakens the artery wall, making it more susceptible to tearing.
But Alan exercised regularly, so naturally he thought he was fit and healthy and could eat anything.
He was pretty much obsessed with physical fitness, which makes his poor diet all the more ironic.
The effects on Alan's body of all the salt and butter he was consuming were compounded by another bad habit.
His meals weren't as balanced as they should be. He could manage having a coffee and a glass of water during the day, and then would eat a lot later in the day, kind of binge eating.
Skipping meals, especially breakfast, is not a good weight control strategy. Alan was just adding problems to his arteries. Studies have shown that people who eat very little in the morning or skip breakfast altogether tend to binge eat later in the day. eating breakfast was associated with a significantly lower incidence of atherosclerotic vascular disease than those who ate late at night.
Alan's dietary choices were not good. But in other aspects of his life, he made better choices. He didn't abuse alcohol or narcotics.
We can't look at Alan as a casualty of Hollywood, of Hollywood excess, the drinking and the carousing, the boozing, the partying. He wasn't that guy.
He just saw enough people ruin their lives that he didn't want to go down that path.
And yet, Alan did indulge in another drug, which was just as damaging: cigarette smoking.
When he was stressed, he would probably tend to have more cigarettes than he should have.
He was a social cigarette smoker. He smoked because everybody else around him smoked.
You don't have to be a chain smoker to suffer the dangerous side effects of tobacco. Cigarette smoke aggravates the risk factors of excessive salt and butter intake in the development of atherosclerosis. The nicotine and carbon monoxide in cigarette smoke damage the cells that line the interior surface of blood vessels, allowing for the buildup of plaque. With Alan's high-fat meals, irregular eating patterns, and now smoking adding to the hardening of his arteries, it seems he was pushing his cardiovascular health to the extreme.
We need to remember now, this is someone who's choosing to start smoking in the 60s, where we still didn't know as much about smoking as we do today. So if you're in college at 15 or 16, it would have been reinforced by this idea that you looked older, you looked cooler, you looked more kind of grown up.
Alan's vices, I guess, were salt, butter, and cigarettes. And that's a bad combination, the three together. Clearly, it's toxic.
Lifestyle with respect to not heeding to some of the signs that were there when he should have. Once he was in the situation, he took it seriously. But, a lot of the times we don't take things that we're told as seriously we should have. And he might have had doctors give him some advice that he didn't always follow.
Alan's lifestyle was a time bomb. His love of sports helped him stave off the inevitable. But for how long?
Alan's lifestyle was a curious mix of an ultra-healthy, keep-fit routine and a very unhealthy diet. Having reviewed his medical background and his lifestyle choices, it seems likely those choices played a part in causing the aortic rupture that killed him. Although Alan worked hard at keeping fit by playing ice hockey 2 to 3 times a week, he consumed far too much salt and butter. Then, to compensate for the fat he consumed, he would skip important meals. And to make matters worse, he smoked.
Alan was inviting disaster by the way he lived. And once you get into these eating habits, it's very hard to break the habit.
Tuesday, December 13th, 2016, Burbank, California, the day of Alan's death. At about 10:15 a.m., Alan, his son Carter, and their teammates are getting ready for their regular Tuesday game.
Alan loved to play hockey. He was a very good player, a really fit guy. He looked physically fit.
At 10:20 a.m., Alan calls his wife Tanya. She says he asked her for some chicken with extra gravy for dinner, lots of TV, and a little sex. Alan then joins Carter on the ice.
He really enjoyed being out there with his kid.
Players usually warm up beforehand to allow the heart to gently increase its tempo.
Warming up is important. It primes your muscles and cardiovascular system for exertion. It increases the heart rate gradually, which then increases the amount of blood circulating through your muscles to warm them and make them more responsive. It also makes the ligaments and tendons more flexible, and so helps to avoid injury. In skilled sports like hockey, a standard neuromuscular and aerobic warm-up has been shown to reduce injuries.
Alan wasn't a warm-up kind of a guy when he was doing a sport. Lots of people take their time and do stretches and everything, but because Alan lived every minute of every day the fullest that he could, he probably rushed from something else to, putting on his skates and his hockey outfit and then rushing onto the ice.
Alan didn't warm up before he'd do sport because either he never did it, it didn't affect him as a young person, or it was part of, again, showing everyone like he had to when he was the 16-year-old in college that he could, just jump in there and do better than everyone else and kind of hold his own.
At 11:15 a.m., the game is at full throttle.
He always pushed himself 100%, and that probably wasn't good for him.
Hockey is a fast-paced, moving game, and Alan was a spirited player, worked hard, loved to score.
A few minutes into the game, Alan feels a stabbing pain in his chest and gut. Carter sees his father is in trouble and races over.
In most cases, the typical symptoms of an aortic dissection include a sudden severe chest or upper back pain, often described as a tearing sensation, accompanied by severe abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, and even dizziness.
He was just gray. He just looked like he just felt so awful.
Aortic dissection can quickly lead to death from the vessel's rupture and resulting catastrophic bleeding, typically around the heart. So how people respond to these early warning signs is absolutely critical.
We called 911 immediately. They're here within 2 minutes. He's like, I'm okay. I just don't feel good. It feels like I got an elephant on my chest.
At 11:45, Alan is on his way to the nearby St. Joseph's Hospital. Carter goes with him. He immediately notifies his two older brothers, Brennan and Robin.
Carter was very shaken, and Alan says, hey, kiddo, take a shot of us. We're gonna laugh at this in a week or two. Alan knew he was having trouble, but I think for Carter, he was trying to be strong.
Alan is rushed to the emergency room. It's the last time Carter sees his father alive. Racing against the clock, doctors run tests on Alan to ascertain what the problem is. His symptoms could indicate a number of possible disorders.
Brennan, his eldest son, lived right near the hospital, and he was there immediately. And Brennan was texting us for each facet of progress of Alan's condition.
2.5 hours later, at 2:14 p.m., Alan Thicke is pronounced dead.
And sad news from the entertainment world tonight. Canadian actor Alan Thicke has died. He reportedly died of a heart attack while playing hockey with his son. Alan Thicke was 69 years old.
Carter wrote on social media, "Today I lost my best friend and my idol, and the world lost one of its finest. You are a legend, and I love you, Pops. Until next time."
My nephew texted and said, Joe, he's gone. And I said, what do you mean he's gone? And he said, he's passed. And that was it. And we just sat there in shock and cried.
You're like, no, that can't be right. It was devastating.
I had a terrible time. It's cruel for a parent to lose a child. Indescribably cruel.
I've already established that Alan's taste for salty, fatty foods and his smoking habit are likely to have played a role in his death. But I still don't believe this is the full story. And looking deeper, I think I may have found the final piece of the puzzle, which explains why this relatively healthy man died so suddenly. Alan Thicke died from the dissection of high-pressure blood between the layers of the aortic wall with sudden, fatal rupture, likely around the heart. From what I've discovered so far, I suggest that this catastrophic event had been a long time coming. Years of consuming too much salt and saturated fat, aggravated by smoking and binge eating following missed meals, caused damage to his cardiovascular system, likely increasing his blood pressure and causing injury to his aorta.
Dr. Hunter believes that an event that occurred several years earlier could also hold a clue to Alan's death.
I'm inclined to believe that Alan Thicke's untimely death may have been related to a medical emergency he experienced 3 years earlier. At that time, Alan suffered a collapsed lung from what was reported to be a spontaneous pneumothorax. I think this may have been a warning sign. The collapsed lung could have been due to a rare issue with his connective tissue, the tissue that supports the integrity of the body's organs. Connective tissue disorders can also result in weakening of the aorta, making it susceptible to tearing from high pressures.
He looked physically fit all the years I've known him. Whenever Alan came in the rink, he was always ready to go. He was just a really fit guy.
So what happened on that particular day to cause his aorta to tear?
What no one could have known that morning is that Alan's aorta had finally reached the breaking point. It only needed one small push to finally tear open, and he got it on the ice.
As soon as Alan was dressed, he dived straight into the game without warming up.
Hockey involves physical contact and great exertion. He was placing a lot of stress on his body and therefore abnormal shearing stress on the aortic wall. Given the strenuous demands of this contact sport, his heart had to work much harder to push blood through the body, increasing the pressures within the aorta. The pressure ultimately became too much, tearing the inner layer of the wall. The location of the rupture was likely just after the aorta's origin from the heart itself. The arterial blood is under such pressure that it would have pumped into the space surrounding the heart, causing what's called a pericardial tamponade, which means as the blood accumulates, it shuts down the ability of the heart to pump, ceasing blood flow to the body's other vital organs, including the brain. The organs would have been starved of blood and oxygen and would have started to fail. His body would have then gone into shock, leading to cardiac arrest, and finally death.
You know, if he hadn't smoked cigarettes and been a big salt and butter eater, there's no doubt he would have lived a much longer life.
But Alan ignored any advice to change his ways.
He was always slim, he looked very good, he played a young man's sport, he was married to someone, much younger than him, so his sense of invincibility would have been higher than the average 69-year-olds.
You'd never know that he was 69. Like, I honestly say that is, yeah, that's almost crazy. I didn't even realize he was 69.
My guess is that those habits were linked to challenges he faced growing up. Trying to look older and tougher when he was the youngest and the smallest among his classmates, that's when ice hockey became central to his life. On the ice, he was one of the big guys. Maybe that's why he never changed his habits. They were all tied up with a childhood dream of becoming a respected hockey player. And in the final analysis, they may have helped make his dream come true, even though he paid the ultimate price for it.
After Alan died, a celebrity hockey game was played in his honor.
Wayne Gretzky, the superstar of superstars, the greatest hockey player who ever lived, organized a game with a bunch of players, and they played with Alan's initial as AT on their uniforms. He couldn't have imagined a better tribute than that.
That to me is just the ultimate compliment. As proud as Alan was of being an actor, I don't think it was the challenge that skating and puck handling and doing all of that stuff was.
I think if Alan had his wish, whether he would be remembered as a great actor and personality and celebrity or a great hockey player, he would have chosen hockey in a second.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I've always wanted to accept the award and say, what a surprise. I have nothing prepared. I have coveted this for some time, so I promise there is not one spontaneous moment in this entire speech.
His last words in life, he looked at Carter, he said, "If I have to go, what better way to go than playing hockey with your son?" I cried for days when I heard that.
If there's a Canadian spirit, I shook its hand. If there's a Canadian soul, I heard its story. If there's a Canadian heart, it beats in me, proudly and gratefully, for this night and for this life.
That there's nothing anyone can say that's negative about Alan Thicke. Even though he was a Hollywood guy, he never fully bought into, having the attitude, which I always really appreciated and admired. He was just one of the nicest, most down-to-earth people I've ever talked to.
Wherever I travel now, I hear, "Hey, fellow Canadian." And I love you for that. I love you for this. Be sure to say hello. Thank you.
Alan was jovial, fun, bigger than life, loved people. I think the world lost a special guy.